After months of putting up with my roommate from hell, I got the revenge of a lifetime and screwed her out of a crapload of money and got her to pay rent, and life has never been sweeter. This story takes place a couple years back. During college, I lived with several roommates. All of them were nice and we got along well, except for this one horrible person. Let's call her Karen. If Satan and Hitler had a child, and that child had a child with Stalin and Cruella de Vil, that would be Karen for you. She's a loud-mouthed, stupid, egocentric, horrible person who has the face that would scare the poop out of a toilet. She would never clean up after herself. She would always leave her plates and things at the spot where she last used them. I have lost count of how many times I caught her stealing my clothes without asking, and if you so much as touch her clothes, she loses her crap on you. Or her drinking our lactose-intolerant roommate's almond milk, and anytime we confronted her about drinking it, she would shrug and say, "I only had a sip. Stop being so stingy." She plays her music loud at night, invites strangers over without giving any heads up. A time or two she didn't pay rent, even though her parents are filthy rich and she's wearing Gucci and Prada stuff. Karen also lies about everything, even things that are not worth lying about. Like, if she woke up at 7 and you ask her, she'll lie through her teeth and say she rose with the sunrise because she's a natural. P.S. This is something I actually heard her say to her parents while she was Skyping them. So cringy. Who the heck says that? But I digress. For months we have put up with her. Of course we tried to get other roommates, but unfortunately when we all moved in, everything including all documents and contracts were done in her name. So kicking her out would have required a lot of effort, and most of us were busy with school and work, and life happens. So we ignore it as much as we can and try to move on. We're all now seniors and in our final semesters, meaning graduation was coming. And Karen is planning a backpack trip across Europe with her friends as a graduation to herself. This is important, so remember this. One of my roommates and my closest friend Sasha has a crush on a guy that lives down the hall. Anytime the two of them are together, Sasha and the guy keep giving each other googly eyes and blushing faces. It was so cute. Sasha is a verbal autistic person and has never dated anyone because she has a hard time with socializing and understanding social cues and subtlety, which, let's face it, that is the core of dating, especially flirting. But with a lot of encouragement from me and the final roommate Lola, we got her to ask him out. He said yes. She was so happy, you guys. She flew back into the apartment and did an hour of happy dance with her arms flailing about with a crap-eating grin on her face. Needless to say, we were also happy. Karen caught wind of this, and it just so happened that she was having relationship problems. I guess her boyfriend finally realized he's dating human garbage. Not to be outshined, Karen behind all of our backs went to the guy's place and spun lies about Sasha, saying she's a serial cheater and even made a fake account for Sasha's so-called boyfriend. The guy never called Sasha, and eventually weeks passed by, he told us why, but by then Sasha felt like the damage was done and lost interest in him. I was effing furious. This level of dickery and bloody pettiness is the straw that finally broke the camel's back, and I vowed I would not leave until I served my slice of justice. Here's another character that you must know about, Professor C. His wife 2 years ago was in a horrible car accident and as a result is in a wheelchair. This is especially problematic because she was a stay-at-home mom that took care of their 2 special needs kids, and they have a toddler at home. Home life is a mess for him. He's running rag between working and single-handedly taking care of his family. The university took pity and also feared the workload would see one of their best and most beloved teachers leave the school, so they struck a deal with him to help him out. In all of his classes there will be quizzes and midterms. This doesn't change, but assignments you submit and he corrects at the end of the year. This is important because our university has zero tolerance on professors that don't constantly update their students' courseworks so that students have the chance to improve their grades. Karen, the lazy and stupid horrible person she is somehow skating through his assignments, even though they require a crap ton of research and writing. I accidentally learned that one of her older friends told her that she only needs to submit the paper on its due date and only write the first 3 pages and use a paraphrase tool for the rest of the paper, so the plagiarism software won't detect it, and would think it's original material, and when the end of the year comes, submit a hard copy, but with the first pages being her actual work, and the rest being completely plagiarized professional work. Professor C won't know because the likelihood a man as busy as him thoroughly checking the work of 120 students is pretty low. I grinned. A plan was beginning to formulate in my head. Oh, sweet mother of Jesus, she is going down. All semester long, I let her do this for the 7 papers, one of them which is a term paper that has 20% on it alone. All the while I spied and gathered all of her passcodes, social media, her student ID, everything. The end of the year came and I compiled all of her assignments, both the original ones with the paraphrasing tools she used to circumvent plagiarism, and the ones she finally handed in, and I even made photos where there's side-to-side comparisons of the assignments. This is a good start, but not enough. So one day, chilling in the living room, I opened a conversation about relationships. Karen is two-timing her new boyfriend and sleeping with some other person. So I ask her questions like, don't you feel guilty for cheating? And, you do realize this is wrong? And I even paraphrase my words in a way that is vague but also clear. For example, I say, it's not fair. So many people work so hard every day to be successful, and you're here cheating and lying your way to success. Karen, narcissistic as she is, would respond with snippets of I don't care, and how she isn't cheating, she's only having fun and everyone does it, so why not her too? This is too good to be true. Even her answers are vague. It's like God put his hand on my shoulder, looked me right in the eyes and said, bury this chick. And I'd be damned if I didn't. As you probably have guessed it by now, I was recording everything. The recording plus the photos and her assignments were more than enough evidence. I sent an anonymous email to the professor, and I tell the girls so that they can prep for the storm that's coming. 3 weeks later, results are out. She failed and lost her crap. She was screaming, crying, wailing. What a sight to see. You best believe the girls and I were laughing. She tried to talk to the professor, but he was not having it. She cried and begged for a second chance, but he said a hard no. So now she has 2 options. She goes ahead and doesn't graduate with us and takes a whole nother semester for one measly course, or take a summer course and cancel her trip to Europe, which mind you, she spent a crapload on. Something like $13,000. And I know, it could have been much cheaper, but Princess Karen only wanted the best, so yeah. The next couple of weeks, she spent sleepless nights because she was calling and canceling all the reservations she made, trying to get her money back. But because the cancellation was so close to her trip, most places refused a refund, or some charge her cancellation fees. She only managed to scrape $5,500 back together, losing $7,500. Ouch. It's not over. Having damning evidence I earned with gusto, I told her she was going to pay the bills until we moved out, which was in 2 months. Payback for all the time she was late on payment or defaulted. And she would from now on do her part of the house chores, or else I'm going to send it all to the admin and faculty dean, and she will for sure be kicked out, and all those university years will have been for nothing. She hated it. She freaking threw tantrums, and cussed me out, but my god if she didn't do what's told. She cleaned her stuff, apologized to Sasha for what she did, I forced her to come clean with her boyfriend. I don't know the guy, but the few times I met him, he was super sweet to us, and I felt bad for the guy. I watched her actually do the dishes for the first time in like years. It was freaking amazing, and I don't regret it one bit. In fact, anytime I feel sad now as an adult, I kick back my feet and reminisce, and a slow crap-eating grin draws itself upon my face. Roommate didn't know what respect was. Brief backstory. I grew up in a small Tennessee college town, ended up leaving for 4 years for high school, and came back for college. During middle and elementary school, I had a close friend who we'll call Bree. Bree was a very bright young girl, good supportive family, and had her future pretty set up. I ended up falling out of contact quickly when I left the town, yet when I came back the summer before college to look for a place, we had bumped into each other at a fast food chain. Turns out, her parents had divorced, and she was going through a total I hate my parents phase that was evidently still ongoing since she confided in me that she was trying to move out. What a coincidence. We get back in contact and agree to house hunt together. She seemed the same, honestly, if not a little more opinionated. We eventually settle for an apartment. Good neighborhood, close by for me. I managed to snag a job while her parents were sending her money for her rent and whatnot. I had plenty in my savings from working my butt off the second I turned 16 and a few good scholarships, so money wasn't a horrible worry for me. We signed the lease and everything is grand. Until the weekend. School didn't start for another 2 weeks, so it's not like I really needed the beauty sleep. However, it's still incredibly annoying to wake up to find your living room filled with random people and the very heavy scent of weed in the air. In case you don't know, weed is illegal in Tennessee. I shrug it off. I'm not going to tell her how to live her life. She's probably just throwing a housewarming party with some of her newer friends. I'm not exactly the most social person, so when I went out because I couldn't fall back asleep, I just sat on the couch looking blankly at the TV. The thing is, I have really good ears. Listening to the random conversations around me, I gathered many of these people were very into doing illegal actions. A lot of it centered around weed. There were 3 different kids with backpacks, which I would later learn were dealers. It was a weed fest. I'm not personally against weed. I tried it a few times and it really just didn't float my boat. Live and let learn is my motto. The night went on as a normal party. A few beers, a crap ton of blunts, the usual. I didn't partake and ended up going back to bed as soon as the noise died down enough. The week went by normally. Had a brief conversation with Bree about the spontaneous party. She says, "Oh, I just wanted to show my friends my new place." Yeah, right. The next weekend, same deal. Tons of people, tons of music, tons of weed. Now I'm a little annoyed, but no trouble had come our way, so I wasn't going to throw a hissy fit. Well, the trouble came the morning after. I went out to grab some snacks and got stopped by a guy. "Hey, do you live in that apartment?" He pointed to my apartment. "Yes," I confirmed. "Could you perhaps dial down the weed smell on the weekends? I mean, I get it, I smoke too, but the smell keeps traveling through the vents into my baby's room," he requested. Of course, I'll talk to my roommate. To make a long annoying talk with her short, she didn't give a crap. The next weekend, she was smoking again. I spent the entire night in front of the vent in the living room spraying it down with Febreze and some scentless spray a dealer gave me when he saw what I was doing. It didn't help. Sunday, he was at our front door explaining to both myself and Bree that if we didn't dial it back, his wife would be calling the cops. And she did, the next weekend. There were usually 20 to 30 people in the area for her parties. They weren't huge, but I've still never seen that many people duck behind furniture and dive into rooms as fast as they did when the now all too familiar cop knock hit the door. Seriously, it took them half a second to scatter, and surprisingly quietly too. So there was a cop at my door, for a party I wasn't even involved in. What the hell? They ended up being pretty chill, saying, "We get it, just dial it down," and leaving, but that was just the beginning. They came 2 more times, each time with the same response, but the 3rd visit they ended up scanning our IDs. I do not need this stuff on my record. They easily had probable cause. The attendees always left at least one piece out in the open like idiots. I usually put up with a lot before I snap, and after countless pleading with Bree, she still refused to stop the partying. I decided I'd have to make them leave. The next party, the cops would no doubt surface. I managed to drag Bree out of the house to the grocery store, claiming I'd buy her snacks. Leaving her to choose, I left to the bathroom and made a rather nerve-wracking call. I knew if they showed up while we were gone, the attendees would have to open the door since they were playing music so loudly. The police would know they were home. I kept Bree occupied as long as I could before she got a frantic call from one of her lovely friends. The cops were there, with no one in their right mind. The cops ended up opening the door to 8 stoned people. Bree immediately forced us to leave and go back home, and minutes after arriving, 3 of her friends were pulled away in handcuffs. Apparently, they had warrants. I was always listening to them while they partied. I'm surprised only 3 were taken. Sending everyone home, I slept like a baby. Nobody came over after that, since our house was officially a hotspot for cops, and it wasn't long until my friend wanted to move out. I ended up meeting a nice guy who was still looking for a place in college, and he eventually signed onto the lease to replace Bree. Looking back, this was honestly incredibly stupid, seeing as I could have been charged as well if they searched the house since I was on the lease. But seeing her friends, which I had slowly been growing a festering hate towards, get dragged away in handcuffs was incredibly satisfying. They did end up getting released a few days later after making some deal, so their lives weren't totally ruined. Haven't talked to Bree since though. How to train your roommate. This is the story of how I used Pavlovian conditioning to train my formerly obnoxious roommate to behave like a responsible adult. So, the three of us are nurses and we all live in this company-provided apartment. Each of us has his own room, which is adjoined by a common area that doubles as a kitchen and dining area, but the walls are paper thin and don't provide enough soundproofing. So, if one were to say, have a loud conversation in the common area during the late hours of the night, it would resonate through all the rooms adjacent. But if you were in your own room talking to somebody, it wouldn't be heard outside. Basically, any sound that you make in the common room would be heard in all the other rooms. Now, this isn't a problem during the day, but at night when everyone is asleep, our one obnoxious roommate always decides to have his Facebook video calls in the common room using his phone, waking everyone up with his loud conversations. And since we're nurses, we have to work in shifts. Me and the second roommate work on 12-hour day shifts, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., while the third obnoxious one works on the 12-hour night shift, 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. So the third roommate tends to be awake at night. We get to sleep soundly when our third roommate is working, but every time he doesn't have to go to work, the two of us tend to be disturbed by his late night blabbering on his phone. We tried to handle it the adult way by talking to him about it and suggesting he do his antics inside his own room, since while in there we wouldn't hear his loud conversations, and he wouldn't wake us up at night, especially if we had to go to work in the morning. This worked for a while, but he eventually went back to his old habits of waking us up at night. We were getting so tired of the situation because all we wanted after a long 12-hour shift was to be able to sleep soundly, especially if we still had to go to work the next day. Our hallelujah came from an episode of The Office that I had just watched, wherein Jim trained Dwight to crave a breath mint every time he restarted his computer. A light bulb suddenly switched on in my head to use our Wi-Fi to train my noisy roommate. Nobody else knew I had admin privileges. I just happened to be there when the guy installed it and they gave me the key. I realized that I had access to our Wi-Fi network wirelessly on my phone and could turn it on and off on a whim like a god. My MO was simple. Every time I got woken up by noisy roommate taking his internet calls in the common room, I would turn off the Wi-Fi in the whole house and wait until he goes back into his room before turning it back on. The training took months and countless late nights. After getting woken up at night by said roommate, I would wait for an opportune time, usually while he's in a deep, loud conversation with someone, to turn off the Wi-Fi, and then wait for him to get annoyed and curse our service provider until he finally gives up and goes to his room, cue for me to turn it back on. The loud late night calls in the common room became less and less until he no longer took him in the common room at all. This translated to silent nights for me and the second roommate, who had to work in the mornings. My method was so effective that he actually thought there was a problem with his phone. Sometime later, he wanted to show me a video of something on his phone, but said that I had to come into his room for him to show me since there was a problem with it and it wouldn't work in the common room. I was grinning like the devil the whole time. Hey, you made it to the end. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up as it helps me out big time. Also, if you're new here, subscribe for daily videos. See you in the next one.